one day, from the cloud of a dozen one day. Yeah. In the club, I'm a sway, it's rockin'. In the club, I'm a sway, it's rockin'.
You're right.
So walk with the culture and the pride of my people. Let my eyes so they can see what I pride when I see through. Let my tongue so they can hear. Love and knowledge when we speak. Like the drum so they can feel the movement of my heartbeat. This is how our pride survive and maintain for many seasons. Now the movement of the culture is alive. Cause we breathe in every breath that I breathe will be the life of my people. Like a mental successor of a pride. Oh my people, for the present, the great, the future. The past must exist, so I shall let the world remember this. For the present, the great, the future. The past must exist, so I shall let the world remember this. Together. seem strong.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another round of the Melanesian School Debating Competition. My name is Ben Bahane. I'm the Communications Director at the Pacific Institute of Public Policy. Welcome again to the teams from Fiji. Papua New Guinea unfortunately hasn't been able to make it, but we have the Vanuatu team, Solomon's team, and Fiji. And as something special because it hasn't been able to make it, we've actually created a Vanuatu All-Stars team who'll be doing the debate this morning with Fiji. So let's give them a bit of slack because they haven't had much time to prepare, but I know they were working very hard all day yesterday to come up with great arguments for their debate this morning. I'd like to ask the two teams to come on up and take their places, please, and then I'll introduce the adjudicators for today's show. So if I can get Fiji and the Vanuatu All-Stars. Great, come on down, and I'll just quickly run through the names of our debaters this morning, just in case you're curious. From Fiji, who'll be speaking against the motion. First speaker, Korea Vicky. Second speaker is Anushika Nath. And the third speaker is Patrick Lau. Welcome for Fiji. And the Vanuatu All-Stars, who've been thrown together very quickly at the last minute, but have done lots of preparation. We have first speaker, Sandy Sawan, second speaker, John Amos, and the third speaker, Georgina Willow. Give them a hand. Okay, and just before I introduce the adjudicators, I'll give you the motion for today so you can start thinking about it. The motion for this morning's debate is that Melanesian countries should accept climate change refugees from other Pacific Island countries. I'll say it again, that Melanesian countries should accept climate change refugees from other Pacific countries. So the Vanuatu All-Stars will be in the affirmative, and our Fiji team will be the negative team for today, arguing against the motion. Okay, now it's my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed adjudicators this morning. We have Ms. Talita Tuipoloto, who's the Innovation Fund Coordinator for PACMAS, which is the Pacific Media Assistance Fund. Welcome, Talita. We have Mr. Derek Bryan, who's the Executive Director for the Pacific Institute of Public Policy. And we have Ms. Laura Leaney, who's the Executive Director from the Melanesian Spearhead Group Secretariat. Thank you very much. We also have Carol here, who's going to be our timekeeper. I'll just quickly run through the rules again. I mentioned them yesterday, but it always helps to do a quick summary of them each day so that you've got them firmly in your mind before you get up. The rules for this debate are aligned with those of the Australasian Debate Guide. Students will have 6 minutes to present their case, with our timekeeper holding up a card at the halfway mark, followed by a card when the speaker has 1 minute left, and then a final 10 seconds card at which the student must promptly wrap up their presentation. Please note that content after this mark will still be taken into consideration, but marks will be lost for timing. Okay, now that we've done the introductions, I think we might get straight into it. It's going to be a great debate ahead, and I'd like to call on the first speaker for the affirmative side, Mr. Sandy Sawan. Thank you.
A family of five are being tortured by something that's horrifying in the most extreme way, that's ruined their home, that's causing a life. Pekaya is a girl of 13 years old whom her dreams are drowned by a flood. Just one natural disaster, just one natural disaster can causes her dreams to be shattered. These are all examples of different people that are affected partly by one situation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are all true stories from Kiribati in the Micronesia, a country that has suffered this historic event of droughts. For example, all the climate change threats to coral atolls, the most pressing is water security. On Tarawa Atoll in Kiribati, half the fresh groundwater supply is permanently salty. Thus, this will cause the people there to move. And these people have been rejected by the New Zealand as quoted on Wednesday, 23rd September 2015. New Zealand has deported a man to Kiribati Party after he lost his case to become the world's first climate change refugees. Ayoan Teitiota's wife and three sons, New Zealand-born children, will fly back to Kiribati next week, bringing the four-year legal battle to an end. Good morning, adjudicators, students, fellow debaters, judges, and distinguishing guests. You are our priority today. My team and I will set forth our case into emotionally, technically, and informatively capturing your wanted attention as our team strongly believes that Melanesian countries should accept climate change refugees from other Pacific island countries. I will critically analyze word by word the topic we are concerned about today. The keyword in this question being should can be defined in two ways. There's the practical, there's the moral obligation which defines the word as a duty or doing something because of the rightness of it. And there's the practical obligation that defines the word as doing something because it is guided by practical observation rather than theory. Accept is defined as to allow or accepting a situation knowing that it cannot be changed, provoking allowance. Melanesian countries should accept climate change refugees from other countries to set an example to other countries, as someone has to break the ice first for allowing others to follow. And to have Melanesian countries take the first step is saying out loud that we care for our brothers and sisters in other Pacific Islands. In this case, others refer to the fact that Melanesian countries are excluded from being refugees and instead them focusing and prioritizing on welcoming the other Pacific Island countries. Now, we're sure you've all heard about climate change, but let us get through its definition once again. Climate change is a natural phenomenon where the temperature gets higher due to release of a huge amount of carbon dioxide and other gas. In consequence, the ice on both of hemispheres are melting, increasing the level of the sea. The small islands are the first ones to be exposed to this. But unfortunately, the sea keeps on rising and some of the Pacific islands are starting to disappear slowly. In consequence to this, the number of climate change refugees is increasing. These climate change refugees are mainly the Pacific Islanders since the effect of climate change is more visible in this part of the world. We have to point out that these refugees are relatively different from asylum seekers. Now, listen, ladies and gentlemen. Now, listen, ladies and gentlemen, we are debating not on whether we can accept them realistically, but instead about whether we should accept them morally. Now, to my first point, the geographical locations. For us, the Pacific Islanders, we are more vulnerable to such disasters as cyclones, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. As quoted by the ADB's development specialist, Alison Woodruff, she stated that the small isolated island countries in the Pacific are highly vulnerable to natural disasters and the effect of climate change. The Pacific is one of the world's most disaster-prone regions. The small island countries that dot this vast ocean are exposed to floods, cyclones, storm surge, and droughts, as well as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunami. Climate change also poses a serious threat as the region is experiencing major temperature fluctuations, changing rainfall patterns, intense storms, and rising sea levels. To my second point, climate change victims. What are we talking about? More and more people are becoming the victims of climate change. Rising sea level rise resulted in the sinking of coral atolls. Thus, its people need shelter elsewhere to live. As known, these problems are sea level rise are way beyond human control. As, as quoted from as quoted from as quoted in December 2014, attention was drawn to an appeal to the New Zealand Immigration and Protection Tribunal against the deportation of a Tuvaluan family on the basis that they were climate change refugees who would suffer hardship resulting from environmental degradation of Tuvalu. Lastly, for my last point, and importantly, is the resources. We understand we don't have much resources, funds, capacity, legislature to host. Though we should be open to support them with the resources, we have to offer them. We have to offer, even if it is, as you say, limited. One of the scarce resources is the land. It is scarce, but it is of significance to the people. As quoted from the artist Stan and the Eighth Force, "My land, my life." Yes, this is true. For we use the land as our bank where we can save money and harvest crops in our gardens to put on our tables. As seen from the statistics, the Micronesian countries have a small land area, but their population density is 3 times more than that of the Melanesian countries. Therefore, accepting them will reduce their population, enabling them to be able to sustain themselves there, but also providing them with a resource we have to offer. By doing so, we are helping them and their resources will be sustained. We are all potential victims of climate change in Melanesia as well. So which side are you going to take if this is at your doorsteps, my Melanesian brothers and sisters? Thank you.
The chairperson, adjudicators, my fellow opponents, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Climate refugees are people who must leave their homes and communities because of the drastic effects of climate change. Our Asian countries should accept climate change refugees from other Pacific countries, and our stand is that Melanesian countries should not accept climate change refugees. I repeat, should not accept climate change refugees. Before moving on with my argument, I would like to introduce my team members and the structure of our discussion this morning. I, Apelli, will be the first speaker and will elaborate on the social effects of accepting climate change refugees. Our second speaker, Anushika, will be speaking on the negative impact of accepting refugees on resources of the host country. Our third speaker, Patrick, will sum up all the points discussed by Speaker 1 and 2. To kickstart, the topic climate change is not concretely static. Its discussions become a skeptical issue to all those who care about the consequences. But do we ever question who is to be blamed? We try to seek answers to the already debated and experienced issues without dwelling onto the root of the problem. The root, ladies and gentlemen, is you and me. Yes, it's us, the highly sophisticated, experimental, and intelligent human beings. The problem of climate change is one that is caused by two main things: the emission of greenhouse gases into the Earth's atmosphere as a result of rapid industrialization and rapid deforestation that has occurred in many countries. The problem was not caused by our small island nations. Melanesian countries have very low rates of carbon emissions, less than 1/10 of the percentage. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I repeat, 1/10 of the percentage. So we did not cause this problem. In fact, we stopped them from getting worse than they might have been otherwise. Melanesian countries are not significantly industrialized, and our forests have been replanted. So why? Why should we, Melanesian countries, bear the economic burden of accepting climate change refugees from other Pacific countries? Countries like Australia should accept these refugees because they are the highest emitters in the world. They are failing to reduce carbon emissions at a rate comparable to the US or the European Union. According to ABC News dated 4th November 2015, Australians have overtaken as the world's largest carbon dioxide polluters. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the world's. My dear listeners, did you know that Australia has 16.93 metric tons of carbon dioxide, whereas Canada has 14.68 metric tons? It was well known that in many cases, the effects of climate change are going to create existential threats to the very survival of our island homes and communities. It is simply not acceptable for advanced economies to build a high standard of living on the degradation of our earth and seas. It is also not acceptable for major nations that are industrializing to assert that they need to degrade the earth just to build their economies. We will not accept climate change refugees, as it can accelerate competition for resources such as food, water, land, and that such competition can trigger conflict with the indigenous people. Yes, that's right. Climate refugees may encounter conflict with indigenous residents. Educational and healthcare systems must adjust to a sudden new population. This population may speak a different language or have a different custom than the native population. Australia's population is quite small compared to the land size. The UK has 248 persons per kilometer squared, while Australia has only 3 persons per 1 kilometer squared. This statistic is evident enough that Australia can cater for the climate refugees easily, as they have more land and resources compared to our Melanesian countries. Ladies and gentlemen, according to Swahili proverb, and I quote, "If a snake bites your neighbor, you too are in danger," unquote. LiveLeak.com 2015 claimed that 20 Muslim refugees raped an 11-year-old girl in a Swedish bathhouse. Refugees? Raped? An 11-year-old girl? Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that we need to ponder upon. The local community revolted, which led to rivalry between the natives and the refugees. This example is an indication that such conflicting situations and criminal activities are bound to surface if the communities take the responsibility of inhabiting climate refugees, especially for our Melanesian countries, where people coexist in a multicultural society. Before moving on to my conclusion, I would like to rebuttal on 2 points that were raised by my fellow first speaker, my opponent. The story about the small girl is shared by our fellow first opponent speaker. This story is not properly referenced, although it's true as stated, but it can be misleading. So how can you believe in such story that's not referenced with perfect foundation? My second point is, he stated that we need to accept them morally. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not know their morals. So how can we accept them? How are you certain that they have good and worse morals? Remember, we as humans, we evolve within time. Ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell, Our team firmly believes that the global environment over the past 50 years have continued on their pathways of increasing industrialization and deforestation to fuel the engines of their economic growth. Such countries have mortgaged our future by their greed. So why? Why should we now pay the price of their profligacy? Thank you.
Good morning, adjudicators and the audience. Before I begin with my points, I'd first like to rebut what my fellow opponent stated. Okay, first off, he suggested that dumping them in Australians' hand. But what does that make us? Does that mean that we don't care about our fellow Pacific Islanders? If we're dumping them in somewhere else, don't you think that don't you think that this some kind is some? Don't you think that we're trying to get rid of them from from the Pacific? We're all Pacific Islanders, and due to the fact that all the countries are located in the Pacific Ocean, we know that we are all potential victims of climate change. However, it is not right for us to discard upon our fellow Pacific Islanders just because they're suffering because of an issue that is global. Climate change is a global issue. So in order for us to address this issue, the best thing that we should do is not to separate ourselves from each other, but is to unite with each other in order that we could cope with this global issue. He then stated that if a snake bites your neighbor, then you too are endangered. However, to ensure that this doesn't happen, we would have to kill the snake, don't we? Because if it bites your neighbor, then you know what type of snake it is. My point is, if you know that climate change is affecting your neighbor, why don't you help your neighbor, not forget about him? This brings me to my point. It is better for us to unite together up front to ensure prosperity within the region, as it is the Pacific way to be opening and accepting of our neighbors, especially in times of need. As we are all Pacific Islanders, we are brought up. Our countries can be termed as God-loving countries. For example, Vanuatu has its motto stating "Longo di Mistanap." So, with that in mind, we are all brought up with the moral of helping others, no matter if it's your enemy. So, to justify this, according to a Bible verse in Philippians chapter 2, verse 4, it states, "Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others." And as the saying goes, It is easy to break a single stick, but hard to break a bunch of them. So if we combine our resources, and we know that we don't have that much resources, and we can't openly dish out resources to other countries, especially to our other Pacific Islanders. What we can do is enable them to come here, because most of our resources are natural resources, and they're not financial, they're natural. So the way that we can look after them is for them to come here. According to the data collected, it clearly shows that the population densities of these suffering islands is 3 times the population density of our Melanesian countries. So in our Melanesian countries, we have 4 different countries. So it doesn't mean that only one country is going to bear the brunt of looking after the whole lot of the other Pacific Islanders. We have 4 different countries, and with these different countries, the total population of the 2 main affected one is, which is Kiribati and Tuvalu, is about 120,000. If that is equally divided in between the different countries, don't you think that it will have a slight impact on our economy? A slight impact, not a huge one. So, and if we're trying to shove them off to Australia, according to the Australian Refugee Review Tribunal decision in 2009, they declined the refugee visa to an applicant from Kiribati, as the refugee convention used in Australia does not have conditions for applicants that are running away from climate change related issues to Australia. So we can't just shove them off to Australia, because they won't be able to go there in the first place. Being in the Pacific must be our issue. And the movement of people is a part of that. To deny this would be to dramatically alter the place of Melanesian countries in the world in terms of how the world views us and how we view ourselves. The political boundary, there is political boundaries and legislative limitations, but do you really think that there should be a boundary for climate change? Because climate change is uncontrollable. Tell me, do you want to live a guilty life of knowing that you could have been able to save the Pacific Islanders, but instead you chose to stand by and watch them die? Through unity, we could help our fellow Pacific Islanders. Thank you very much.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Okay, the adjudicators, fellow debaters, and dear audience, my greetings to you all. Before moving on with my argument, I would like to rebuttal on my opponent team's point. My fellow opponent mentioned about humanity. Well, I don't buy that argument. I would like to justify my point with reference to PNG. According to Earth's First News Wire dated 6th April 2014, the Carteret Island of Papua New Guinea have become the world's first climate change refugees. About 20 large families have been affected. Yes, 20 large families. So if you are already in such a difficult situation, how can you cater for others? Well, if I was given an option between choosing my own people, saving my country's people, or accepting refugees, I would stand by my people and save them. Because this problem can result in catastrophic. And, well, that's all. And now I would like to begin with my point. Okay, Melanesian countries are comparatively poor, but the UN calls developing nations. So why add to our economic woes by asking us to accept these refugees? We cannot afford to give these people land to plant or build their houses. We cannot, I repeat, we cannot allow these people to come and live in our already overcrowded cities and villages. Such refugees will add to the social problems that Melanesian countries are already experiencing. For example, Fiji has agreed to accept the climate change refugees from Kiribati, and that, my dear audience, is indeed very grateful of the Fiji government. However, they have forgotten about the challenges in their own country. Fiji is already experiencing the effects of climate change, such as frequent flood and drought. I would like to share the case study of Orisi Rokosalu of Tailevu, Fiji. The 54-year-old said, the rise in sea level had caused a lot of damage to the village of Galakuro, Tailevu. He sent his people to the government to allocate and intervene an area for him and his people so that they could move to higher grounds and be safe. This information was published in the Fiji Times, dated 26 October 2015. The Fiji government would now spend about $667,000 for the construction of the seawall in that particular village alone. Yes, $667,000 for the construction of the seawall in that particular village alone. And about 20 families have been relocated. So what about the other areas in Fiji, which are already in the grips of climate change? How can we help or cater for other climate refugees if our people are already in such difficult situations? My dear friends, accepting climate change refugees will pressurize the health, security, and education services of our developing Melanesian countries. To add on, we cannot afford to give these refugees land to plant, as we ourselves do not have enough space for our own people. We are resettling them to higher grounds. So where will these refugees go? We cannot look at the short-term solutions, or more figuratively, the band-aid solutions to these small island nations, and then later tell them what? That we are sorry? We cannot look after you in our country anymore, so please find another savior for your problems. Would that be right? No, it wouldn't. To add on, the refugees' culture will also be assimilated, as their language and culture will be dominated by the host country's dominant culture. How can we support other island nations when we ourselves need aid from other countries? When Melanesian countries are not self-sufficient, then how can we support other island nations? Like to be Kyoto Protocol, which is an international treaty that extends the 1992 Convention framework based on the premises that A, global warming exists, and B, man-made carbon have caused it. To add on, Australia and US have not signed the Kyoto Protocol, and because of these two nations, the Kyoto Protocol was shelved in the year 2001. According to the Tuvaluan Prime Minister, Sofatu Saporia, at the annual Pacific Island Forum in 2000, and I quote, "We are actually expecting they will do something concrete about making a marked contribution to ensure that industrialized countries respect and implement the Kyoto Protocol," unquote. If the developed nations like Australia and USA can give aid to the developing nations, then why not accept these climate change refugees and take full responsibility of their well-being? In conclusion, our neighboring islands such as Kiribati, Tuvalu, and the Marshall Islands are destined to physically sink beneath the waves altogether. Other nations will lose large tracts of arable land, and we will all be more vulnerable to the extreme weather events which already come out of nowhere, kill our people, and ravage our economies. All because of the inaction and gross irresponsibility of what I unashamedly call the condition of the selfish. So it's high time that the same condition of the selfish take full responsibility of the climate change refugees instead of dumping them in our developing Melanesian countries. Therefore, our team strongly believes that we should not, I repeat, we should not accept the climate change refugees. Thank you.
Well, you do know that Australia and New Zealand have rejected them, right? Due to recent report from last May. Anyways, your first speaker suggests dumping them into Australia's land, and we've already rebutted that. We've stated that Australia has already rejected them due to recent reports from 2009, and due to our increase in land, we can host these refugees. Bila Finaka, and to our fellow Fiji team and the audience. As the last speaker, will be summarizing our last points. Yes, and I agree, ladies and gentlemen, let us not forget in 2009, the inhabitants of Karatet atolls in Papua New Guinea became famous when some of the island families from the island migrated to the mainland of Bougainville. These were our world's first climate refugees. Yes, we all know that. And in the meantime, earlier this year, a Kiribati man created international headlines attempting to claim refugee status in New Zealand. This was due to climate change, but unfortunately, he and his family were unsuccessful. To put this on a larger scale, the Kiribati government has already started to look at their options, buying land in Fiji, and even discussions to manufacture a floating city to rehouse their citizens. Yes, we are developing Vanuatu and Melanesia. We Melanesian countries are already victims of climate change and the destruction it brings. We have seen firsthand the challenges it brings and should be willing to help our neighbors in a similar position. Remembering the 13-year-old Mariah Bekai from Kiribati Island, as our first speaker mentioned, who had suffered the loss of her family, whose dream of becoming a doctor drowned in a flood. Another man from Kiribati, also a victim of climate change in his Pacific Island home, is currently on the cusp of being deported. After a 4-year battle to claim his refugee status, New Zealand has refused to recognize his situation, and plans have been made to send him home to Kiribati. Do you see now why we're the only hope? So it is in this sense that Pacific must be our issue, and the movement of the people is applicable to that. To deny this, Melanesia, we would be dramatically to alter Australia's place in the world, as Australia has rejected to provide a shelter for one person who could no longer live in his home country due to climate change, something that's not controlled by human actions. However, he was not given a safe place to live, but instead dumped in Australia's immigration detention center on Christmas Island. Is this how we want to treat our refugees? Yes, and these are our refugees, as we Pacific Island countries are united. We should be the one to step up, setting an example for other Pacific countries, Australia being one and New Zealand being one, to follow our good leadership. Don't you agree? Yes. This will unite us up front and ensure prosperity within our region. It is the Pacific way. It is the Melanesian way to help our brothers and sisters from our Pacific where they are in times of need. Learn from us. Though we understand our Melanesian countries have limited resources in terms of finance, funds, capacity, and legislation to host them, we should be open to support our brothers and sisters with what resources we have to offer for the greater good, for human rights. Even with the limited resources we have, we are still able to make a big difference by helping them out when our biggest nations, Australia and New Zealand, are denying them into their grounds. And I quote, "There appears no doubt that the second the applicant and other consideration and attention. However, these matters are recognized by United Nations Refugees Convention and therefore, as it states, by the Australian law." So can you see why here this Australian executive is not willing to accept climate change refugees? They can see the adverse situation faced upon these applicants, and they have the finance, land, and capacity to be the hosting nation for these vulnerable Pacific citizens. We agree, Fiji, okay? But still, they are not willing to assist. It is our moral obligation to assist human rights around the Pacific. We must ensure security and safety, as denying that we would be contradictory to our Melanesian values. Hemi fasen beliuni manples, beliuni hoipenol prapa, masistabeliuni. Let us take example from Papua New Guinea, who supported the internal migration of their citizens during times of civil war, and now Fiji has accepted to take Kiribati refugees as part of their dignified migration. It is possible to welcome refugees even though we don't have the ideal amount of capacity and financial support. Here we can lean into our Melanesian ways of supporting families to ensure no one gets hungry, no one is without a roof over their heads, and no one is left behind. Audience, if we turn a blind eye to this, like Australia and New Zealand have done, they will be left behind. Poverty will increase dramatically throughout the Pacific, even so, maybe the whole world. By ignoring them, we will not find a solution. They will continue to struggle in their homeland countries. You may say mass migration might not be the best way to deal with climate change, but even so, if we were to look to implement flexible adaptation strategies to help families to stay alive and thrive in their traditional communities, poverty will still be on the increase. Likewise, alarming predictions by the UN charities and environmentalists says that between 200 million and 1 billion people could flood across international borders to escape the impacts of climate change in the next 40 years. A large percentage of this would undoubtedly be from Pacific Islands. We need to be prepared to help. In conclusion, our team would like to make a few recommendations concerning this topic. 1, that the United Nations formally accept the term climate refugee under the Refugee Convention to recognize that citizens are under natural threat and will be need to rehome due to the climate change. 2, as a member of the United Nations, we have the right to voice our opinions. Therefore, we recommend our Melanesian representatives to ensure that the security and safety of climate change victims are dealt with by the global community as well. 3, for all members of the Melanesian Spearhead Group to meet specifically regarding and coming up with a sustainable strategy to incoming climate victims. Thank you. We rest our case.
First foremost, I would like to rebuttal to a point my fellow opponent mentioned. It can't go. We are not dumping these people. We're thinking of our own people. How can we let these refugees risk our land and our resources? There are other countries that can accept these climate change refugees. Why Australia and New Zealand? Why not countries like USA? Did you know, people, did you know that the attack that happened in France recently, there was a refugee involved, and that was according to the BBC News. And so now they do not like to accept refugees. How can we help when we ourselves are affected? That's like giving money to a person to pay his debt when you yourself owe a lot. I'll let you contemplate on that. Pacific people are all not of one race. We each have our own distinctive way of life, our culture, and our language. So there is no real advantage in relocating climate change refugees. The adjudicators, fellow listeners, and debaters, a very good morning to you all. Pacific Island Forum expressed a grave concern about climate change. The leaders of the Cook Island, Kiribati, Nauru, Niue, and Marshall Islands released a statement saying, they expressed a profound disappointment at the decision of the U.S. to reject the Kyoto Protocol, the statement that specified Australia being the region's biggest greenhouse emitters and one of its largest aid donors. Tuvalu, Fiji's last palm tree, would sink under the Pacific Ocean, ladies and gentlemen, within 50 years. According to Fiji Times, dated 30th October 2015, the industrialized nations are putting the welfare of the entire planet at risk so that their economic growth is assured and their citizens can enjoy life at a comparative ease. This will happen even though the argument for urgent and decisive action is unassailable. Three of our Pacific Island neighbors, dear listeners, Kiribati, Tuvalu, and Marshall Islands, are destined to physically sink beneath the waves altogether. The Melanesian countries should not accept climate change refugees, as it will have a huge impact on our health sector. According to the Fijian Health Minister, Chone Usumate, he elaborated, the temperature and rising sea levels would result in health-related illness, which will affect Fiji's population. With rising sea level, there's a high chance of salt water seeping into the water system, leading to dehydration. Salinity, ladies and gentlemen, salinity affects plant growth and water quality, resulting in lower crop yield and reduced agricultural production. I repeat, reduced agricultural production. So therefore, this will not satisfy anyone, including climate change refugees. Fiji, or let it be any Melanesian countries, are having so much on their plate, then how will they be able to cater for climate refugees? For instance, a person from Tuvalu who wants to go his red lintero and catch lagoon fish, moving to Nandi, Fiji, where there is no wetland and no lagoons for catching fish, even if he got the permission to do so. So he will end up eating McDonald's hamburgers. Might as well go to Australia and New Zealand, where there is a burger bar on every street, and not in Fiji. In synthesis, as discussed by our team, Melanesian countries did not cause on a large scale that are leading to the issue of climate refugees. So why should we be made to suffer the consequences of accommodating these refugees? In fact, we in the Pacific are innocent bystanders in the greatest act of folly. I would like to quote what the Fijian Prime Minister had said in Fiji in the conference held according to the Pacific Island Forum, and I quote, "The Pacific Islands' interests are about to be sacrificed, and a time will come when our citizens will be forced to migrate," unquote. It is very important, my dear friends, that we do not have to deal with those who has enabled us to gain high office and betray your principles and my positions. Climate-induced migration is inevitable, but it doesn't mean they be deposited into the Melanesian countries who themselves are finding hard to accommodate for their own people. Therefore, our views are firmly rooted with our belief that we should not accept climate change refugees. Thank you.
Wow, that was terrific. Let's give them a big hand. Lots of good use of facts and information, very entertaining, few little stories, and lots of passion. Congratulations. It was a really fiery debate, and good to see you passionate about these issues. Yes, these issues are something that we can debate in an abstract kind of way, but let's remember that these are also very serious issues that face the Pacific. So it's great to see young leaders like yourselves stepping up to the plate and giving us some real food for thought there. Let's give them one more round. Thanks very much to the All-Stars from Vanuatu. And another round for our terrific team from Fiji. We're just going to have a few minutes for our adjudicators to make up their minds I don't envy them. That was a very close debate. While we're waiting for our adjudicators to come up with a winner, I'd like to throw this out to the audience and see if we've got any questions that we might be able to answer while we wait for our adjudicators. Any questions from the audience? It's a really important issue. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. We'll give him a minute. I have a feeling you're right. I think under Kevin Rudd, they ended up signing the Kyoto Protocol. The question is, how ambitious will the target be when they go to Paris, which is happening this week? So again, a reminder that this is a very timely subject, because I think we've got governments and NGOs around the world who are all converging on Paris right now to deliberate on COP21, and hopefully there'll be some sort of resolution out of that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the question. The source is from the UN's Convention Framework, 2011. Does that satisfy your? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Doesn't even have to be around refugees per se, it could be around climate change or what Pacific countries are doing. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, can you just project your voice a little bit?
What did she say? What did she say?
We might get a...
Yeah, we have a mic here. Sorry.
The first speaker from Fiji, I think he mentioned something about crime, like more crime rating if they come here. And I think that's incorrect because, say, if we were in that position and we wanted to be refugees to other Pacific Island countries, do you really think that would be the same? And how would that make you feel to be accused of like being murderers and stuff or bringing more crimes over there when you just really want to escape your situation?
You could come up.
Yes, I did state it on a crime. In fact, it was rape. And we all know that people, we have different morals. We can accept them, they can have different image, but once they arrive there, people change over time. So if they get more problems, they can involve themselves in such crimes. So like we said, people do change and their mindset can also change. Thank you.
Great. Yes, I can see a question at the back. Sorry, just wait for a second. We'll get you a microphone.
I'm Simon from Papua New Guinea. I'm very disappointed that the Papua New Guinea isn't here. Just a statement. The Australian government has just introduced aid for trade, and they wanted countries in the Pacific to at least provide something and they will give the funding. And that aid for trade, I don't know how it will affect the smaller countries that are trying to get funding from Australia. It will be a big issue for us in the struggle. And if they introduce that, smaller countries like Kiribati, Nauru, which they mentioned, they cannot participate in that. Only big countries like Fiji, Papua New Guinea could participate in that. And from that perspective, you look at Australia, for example, they're putting posters up, turning all the boats away. They cannot even take care of the issues. How can they take care of our issues? That's the point that I'm trying to do. They have done so much for us. They give so much funding for the countries here and for Papua New Guinea, for all over the Pacific. They're introducing strict policies like, for example, the boomerang aid that is coming in, going back to them. They're now introducing aid for trade. I don't know, it will go a long way. But for Pacific Islanders, I think the best solution for us is to help ourselves for the time and we wait for them to come to their mind, probably. But they must always remember that that is Aboriginals' land. Thank you.
Fair point. Thank you. Okay, any more questions? We might have time for one more. I'm looking now at our adjudicators and I can see they're still busy deliberating. Any more questions? Yes, I can see one here.
Oh,
Okay, we've got one in the middle.
is there any other way that we could help them other than having to leave their home countries? Is there any other alternatives that these refugees could use?
I think that's a good question and one that many places like Kiribati are looking into. I've even seen plans by a Japanese company to create a floating city in Kiribati. So I know there's lots of very interesting engineering ideas going on about how they might be able to protect. I also know that there's plans to try and climate-proof various islands, and there's certainly a lot of movement around moving villages inland, but it's a big issue for some of the atoll countries that don't have high ground. But I'll throw that open in case there's anyone from our Vanuatu All-Stars who might like to mention something there. Yep.
Yes, in fact, scientists and researchers are looking at ways to help them adapt in their own countries. Though this may limit whatever their adverse situation may be, though it won't decrease, it won't eradicate poverty, which will arise because after climate change, there's extreme temperatures for that spans for around decades or so, 40 years at least. Yeah. So poverty will be on the increase.
Thanks very much. Yeah, interesting question. Hope you got some points back there. All right, looking at our adjudicators, I think they may have come to a decision. And I wonder whether they've nominated Talita to come up and represent the panel. Talita, would you like to come up and give the adjudicator's decision? Yep, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. If I can just ask you to please give another round of applause for both our teams. Okay. So I've been tasked today by the adjudicating panel to make an announcement on our behalf. So just before I make the announcement of who the winning team is and who the best speaker is, just know it was a very tough decision. Our marking was based overall on team performance and research. Climate change being one of the darlings of the developing world, it is not an easy topic to debate. So both teams did extremely, extremely well. So congratulations to you both and also to your teachers and those that helped you in the background as well to prepare for today's debate. Okay, so just a little more of what we're marking you on. So again, on vocal style, on your presentations. And we're very, very impressed with the research that you've done on the topic and the swag that was brought into the presentation also. We would also like to comment on the girls, on the girl in each team. Both females did amazingly well considering the gender balance, as you can see here up front in both teams. So congratulations, ladies. being part of the Melanesian debate team for this morning. So again, we would just like to encourage you. Climate change, the truth is it affects everyone. And everyone will have their own opinion about it, but we do encourage you to keep learning about it and keep sharing. I hope this is an opportunity for you to network, that this is not the end of the debate for you, that you will make new friends here, share experiences and learnings, because this is a wonderful opportunity, a platform to you, for you to just continue your education at a very young age. So congratulations to you both for your performance. And just know it was a very close call, but today's winning team goes to Fiji. And I'm sure the room can agree that the best speaker goes to Boy Got Swag on Fiji. Patrick Lau of the Fiji team. So thank you very much for attending today's debate. And again, congratulations to you both.
Thanks, Talita. And yeah, just to add to that, our Vanuatu All-Stars team, came to the project very late, and I think they did incredibly well to come up with the presentations that they did today. So special thanks to you guys for coming in. Okay, we're going to take a short break and come back with the next debate, probably in the next 5-10 minutes. So, yep, stay tuned, and we will be back with the next debate topic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.